Hi guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the AOC CU34G2X. Now this is a ultra-wide 34-inch curved gaming monitor that can be found for around £500 in the UK and around $450 in the US. Links will be down in the description below in case you're interested. Now in this review I'll be very much addressing some of its competitors, such as from BenQ, and even other monitors that I've reviewed, such as an AOC monitor and even an LG monitor, which to me are some of the best ultra-wide monitors you can currently find in the market. However, these are a lot more expensive at around £700 and £1,000 respectively. So what do you get for the specs? Well, it's a 3440 times 1440p resolution. It runs at 144 Hz refresh rate at that quoted resolution. It has a quoted response time of up to 1 milliseconds. That's with MPRT. We'll get into that in just a bit. It's a VA based panel. In terms of inputs, you've got HDMI and DisplayPort to choose from. It's also got a 3.5mm jack for your headphones out, and also a USB hub, which has 4 USB 3.0 hubs, which are found on the bottom right hand side of the monitor. Other than that, if there's any other specs that I've missed out, make sure you check out AOC's website. Again, that'll be down in the description below in case you're interested. Now, the monitor itself has a curvature. It's a 1500R curvature, very similar to another monitor out there, such as a Lenovo monitor. Now, the build quality of the monitor, I must say, is very good. You've got 3-sided borderless design and a very thin bezel at the underneath. The stand holds the monitor pretty sturdily, and you've got height adjustments and tilt and also pivots as well. It's good GG my speakers there, yeah, it's got good adjustment. Obviously you can't swivel it around given the fact that it's a ultra wide curved monitor. Now the curvature itself doesn't add any sort of tail off on the sides. Some ultra wide monitors, specifically in the older models, had a tail off. In other words, text gets lost on the sides. That's not the case with this monitor. I have no issues whatsoever with it. In terms of build quality, the only thing I would comment on, however, is these buttons which are found underneath. They're pretty horrible. Bottom right hand side, they're physical buttons, which is great to see. However, the buttons themselves are a little bit hard to access and a little bit hard to press. Now, the buttons themselves will be useful for those who want to access to OSD. And what I'm going to just do over here is just quickly show you guys my OSD settings. Now, bear in mind the brightness is on 0. That's purely based on the fact of my camera to pick up the monitor properly without kind of overexposing the rest of the scene. So you can see normally in the brightness section I would have it at around 80% and I'll get into that in just a bit. In terms of color setup, I would suggest the warm setup rather than the other ones, but you've got user sRGB mode and what have you. You've got picture boost, which basically has a different type of look on the screen, so you can have a certain insert within your screen. OSD setup, pretty self-explanatory, and pip settings as well. Now the game settings I'm going to come to in just a bit. I've got Counter-Strike tab down there, but you can see over here I've got medium overdrive. I've got low input lag mode enabled, MBR 0, adaptive sync off. So anyway, it's just worth bearing in mind that these are the settings that I have. If you do enable adaptive sync, what happens is that MBR does get disabled. So if I do that now, it's going to flash off and on, and then you'll see MBR gets, well, hopefully you'll see, the MPR will get completely disabled, so you can't use the two together. Now in terms of adaptive sync, that is with AMD graphics cards only, so it's just worth bearing in mind. However, you might be able to see that G-Sync will work with the monitor, so you can enable G-Sync if you so wish. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. But yeah, you can set up G-Sync and have that. It's not a well, the monitor itself, in terms of G-Sync compatibility, you know, it works because it has AMD adaptive sync in there. So it's just worth bearing in mind. So now, with that all out the way, what about the picture quality? So picture quality, first of all, my own first impressions, where the fact that this monitor looks relatively decent out the box. It doesn't look as good as some other VA panels I've seen out there, or IPS based ultra-wide panels, but overall the picture quality is half decent to say the least. Specifically in terms of the contrast ratio, given it's a VA panel, you kind of come to expect it, but it's still good to see that the contrast ratio is really good. So for example, from the land over here to the sea, you've got a good sort of contrast between the land and sea. Here, the Statue of Liberty versus what you see in the background, it looks really nice and it kind of pops out. However, the color accuracy did seem a little bit off to my eyes. It just didn't seem to appeal as much as I would want it to do so. And therefore, when I put it on a calibrator, I was pretty much not surprised to find that it does hit an average delta E of around 2.32, which isn't bad to say the least. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad for a gaming monitor. However, if you look across the board, it does have quite a lot of variances in the darker scenes, which was somewhat surprising, and then some bad points, let's say, throughout the rest of the color spectrum. Contrast ratio as 1000, just under 1900 to 1 is to be expected. And other than that, maximum delta E was 4.36. Now, in comparison to other monitors that I've reviewed, such as this AOC or even this LG, these other monitors provide much better color accuracy out the box and are stupendously good. So therefore could be used for color grading and video grading or whatever you want to do, whereas this AOC monitor would not be suitable for that. However, it is a gaming monitor, so unless you want to pay £700 plus, this monitor will be absolutely fine to your eyes if you're a gamer. Just bear in mind that if you're a color editor or something, then you're not going to be looking for this monitor anyway, but still it's worth bearing in mind that it's not exactly the most color accurate monitor. Now, moving on from that, let's talk about the brightness. Now, I did say I'm going to allude to that. Now, brightness, so you've got, in the overdrive setting, you've got a boost mode. Now, the boost mode basically brings down brightness to 70 nits, which is really, really dim, to say the least. Then if you go into normal overdrive or high overdrive, you can get up to 260 nits, whereas if you dial it to the color mode of sRGB, it goes down to 230 nits. Hopefully I'm making sense. If I'm not, make sure you ask me down in the comments below. Big hand there. But ask me any questions if you so wish, and I'll be sure to explain what I mean by all of this. sRGB standard, as I mentioned, it's not really made for color editing and things, but 89% sRGB gamut coverage, gamut volume of 90%, not bad for a gaming monitor. Now, in terms of brightness uniformity, if I just zoom out yet again, I know this is really fun, zooming in, zooming out, the brightness uniformity isn't bad. Again, for a gaming grade monitor, I was pleasantly surprised. You've got a variance, well, at least on my panel, is around 15% at the top left and bottom left as well. It's, again, pleasantly good for a gaming monitor. If you're looking for a professional grade monitor, this probably won't be it. Now, in terms of backlight bleeds, another test that I did, you can see that a picture I took, you can see backlight bleed across all the sides of the panels. Again, to be expected for a gaming monitor, and it is completely panel lottery as to what you get. It is acceptable for what an ultra-wide monitor is, and I wasn't too disappointed. If anything, it was just the top left-hand side where I saw the most bleed. So now let's talk about HDR. HDR is supported, but it's just HDR10 standard, at least according to TFT Central. Shout out to Simon, by the way. So the HDR standard over here is just basically it supports HDR, so you can feed a HDR signal into it. However, when it comes to HDR itself, you'll be able to see in this picture, at least from Destiny 2 that I took, this is without HDR, and then this is with HDR. HDR really didn't bring anything to the game over here, and if anything, I much preferred playing it without HDR. So unless you own a console and you see a benefit of using HDR, then by all means use it. If you're on Windows and you want to use HDR, I'd completely forget about it and just use it without HDR. You're going to see a much better color accuracy and a sort of popping sort of nature. Now, in terms of the responsiveness of the panel itself, something that's very important for me as a competitive gamer. Now, I must say the responsiveness of the monitor itself is pretty good. Out the box, the input lag is pretty minimal, and it's somewhat surprising given the fact that you are basically playing on an ultra-wide monitor. I must say I had no complaints in terms of that, in terms of moving my mouse left and right. However, overdrive was a somewhat of a concern, and the reason why is because when you do enable overdrive and namely put it at high overdrive setting, you get a ton of ghosting. Now, you might be able to see on your camera, look at this little door frame completely all over the shop. Destiny 2 was 10 times worse in terms of this because it's a much more visually appealing game. Now, of course, you going to get the best sort of response time of the monitor with overdrive strong, but you're never going to play this because your eyes will be absolutely bleeding. So medium overdrive is what I suggest, and in this case the response time is decent. It's not the best. However, given the price and given its type of monitor, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Would I use it for competitive gaming? Yes, if I'm a lower type of rank. If I'm a higher type of rank, then I wouldn't use this monitor. Well, why would you buy an ultra-wide monitor for competitive gaming anyway? But no, I wouldn't use it for competitive gaming. At a higher level, I would buy the LG or the other AOC monitor instead, because those are extremely good at dealing with overdrive at high settings with very minimal ghosting. NBR does reduce, so that's worth bearing in mind. It does reduce the brightness of the screen, as I mentioned before. And then obviously I did mention, if you are a casual gamer or you're someone who wants to use adaptive sync, then of course do so. Just bear in mind you need the right NVIDIA graphics card if you want to use it on NVIDIA GPU, or AMD graphics card to benefit from adaptive sync. So overall, in terms of overall gaming experience, I must say I'm pretty impressed. I have no sort of real complaints. Again, it's not a pro-grade monitor in terms of video editing, photo editing, all that stuff. But also, it's not a monitor that I would personally use when it comes to competitive gaming. So, with all of that information, should you buy this monitor? Let's just put it into perspective. This is a £500 monitor. It is not an £800 or £1,000 monitor, which, you know, these are the kings of ultra-wide monitors, and they pretty much provide somewhat similar specs. If anything, they don't provide 144Hz, at least not the AOC monitor, and therefore out the box you might think, whoa, this 144Hz monitor that you see in front of you is the best deal that you're going to potentially find. I'll just put it in plain terms for you. If you want a decent ultra-wide monitor for around £500, then yes, it's fine. If you're a casual gamer, you'll be absolutely satisfied with it, specifically with that resolution and that refresh rate. If you are someone who is a competitive gamer, then you should invest more money if you want an ultra-wide monitor. If you are a color artist, designer, whatever it is, and you are a gamer, but then you want an ultra-wide monitor, then again, this monitor isn't it. You're going to have to spend pretty much double in order to get a really good gaming, color-accurate monitor. So, in essence, I would recommend it. However, it's nothing too special on the market. The reason why is because these monitors kind of exist already. Now, this AOC monitor is absolutely brand spanking new, and yet the BenQ EX3415R, Jesus, these names, is there, and it pretty much provides almost the exact same specs, other than the fact that it runs at 100 Hz versus 144 Hz, and that can be found for around £480. Ultimately, AOC have come out with a slightly better spec'd monitor and are charging slightly more in terms of premium. So if you are looking for a monitor at £500 and you want an ultra-wide monitor, then all I can say is yes, I would recommend this monitor, and I would recommend other monitors which come in its class. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully I haven't waffled too much. I've given you all the information that you might want. If you do like this video, make sure you give it a like. As always, it always helps my channel grow. Again, this is a completely unbiased, independent, unpaid, unsponsored, you name it, review. I just do it for my fun in my own spare time. And again, subscribing, favoriting, sharing, all that stuff will very much help my channel grow and help me continue giving you this unbiased advice. So there we go, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye-bye.